All right, so now you can kind of look at the coaching perspective of why you do what you do, especially in the summer training. So I know I gave this part of the packet to everybody and said, pretty much don't look at it until after your finals. So I kind of went through just a little bit of it, and then it was kind of like you could read it on your own, kind of decipher it on your own, but I'll try to explain it the best I can. So that you can understand pretty much like the science behind it, and making sure that we're in the right energy zones when we're training, because there is a purpose behind everything that we do, and so it's it is important for you to kind of understand that. But again, too, this is just real interesting stuff, especially when looking through like the coaching perspective of it. So first things first is this is our pyramid right here. You want to think about kind of like building a house. Or when you want to cook in the kitchen. You have to build your foundation first, which is down here in the general endurance and general speed. The big part of the pyramid, the one that's going to hold the pyramid together. So you have to build your first floor, your living room, your kitchen especially. And then, as we start to get this general endurance, general speed, we can start to work up the pyramid and eventually get into our more specific adaptations and specific energy zones that we want to train in. Here and there, we will sprinkle some aerobic support, anaerobic support, some very little direct endurance support, in our summer training. But again, too, as we saw with the big picture, we won't really tap into the majority of this stuff until we get back to campus in the fall. So a lot of your training is going to be down here in the general endurance, general speed training. So we can build that foundation, so we have a nice strong foundation, and then we can start building up from there to specific. So I'm going to go back to the big picture plan here, and just kind of show you, you might have seen this on your, down below here on your big picture plan. And I told you kind of that's like for me to kind of figure out. Well, I want to give you like a little bit of an insight here, and I think it's over here, yeah. So if we go back to the training intensities, you see that we have general endurance, general speed, and then as we go up the ladder, aerobic support and anaerobic support, and then direct endurance support, direct speed support, and then into our specific. So as we're looking at the big picture, we have recovery. General endurance is GE, AES is aerobic support, I labeled. DES is direct endurance support, S is specific. And then on the anaerobic side of the pyramid, we have DSS, or direct speed support, ANS, anaerobic support, GS, general speed, and N, neuromuscular. So as you can see, so again, this yellow part here is more so our summer training. And as you can see, we are just going through general endurance. Week 2, we start to go into a little bit of general speed. Not much is happening. I might throw some strides in there. That's pretty much it. Then we go into general endurance, some general speed, and here you see the DES, or the direct endurance support, and that's just maybe one of those workouts like that fartlek workout that I gave you. And then same thing with here and here and here and so forth. So as you can see, as we get more so in the aerobic support system here, that's when the intensity starts to slowly increase a little bit more. And then again, as we start to add more and more stuff in here, you see like the anaerobic support system, we start to see that right when we come back from summer training, you can see the intensity is now increased. So that's what those stand for, and those what those mean. We won't really get into that specific part of the triangle until we get into our pre-competition phase. So that way you can see that here specific all the way through our competition phase and our postseason. So that's just kind of cool just to look at that, so you understand, what we're doing first. We're starting that base down here, general endurance and general speed. Okay, so again, too, this is just a little classification system, and this kind of is, again, in the coach's eyes of, okay, say we want to do a general endurance workout today, or pretty much an easy run. Well, that pace level is going to be about 3 race distances up, plus or minus, from the race that we normally do. So for women, 6K, and men, 8K. So what are 3 race distances up? Well, it's going to be kind of like a marathon pace type of run. Aerobic support, okay, we are now looking at trying to pace ourselves 2 race distances up from our pace of like a 6K or an 8K. And that's going to be where we start tapping the lactate threshold and half marathon pace stuff. Direct endurance support, one race distance up. And so like if we're looking at, a 6K for instance, if we want to do a direct endurance support type of run, for women, that's going to be tapping into like a 10K pace type of run. Or for guys, maybe a 10K pace, maybe more so a half marathon pace since you're running an 8K. So that's kind of what that means. And then again, too, it goes on the other side of the spectrum with our anaerobic support. And then specific, obviously, is your pace is race pace. So in this instance, it's a 5K pace. So for guys, your specific will be doing workouts at 8K pace and so forth. And we won't really get into that until later part of the season when we've built our general endurance and general speed. Okay, so again, too, this is something to kind of look at as well with our support training paces. So if we're doing like an aerobic support run, okay, let's start down here instead. So our general endurance, general speed, this is the bottom of our pyramid here. General speed, again, that's just pure sprints, all the way up to 3,200 meter pace if I'm running a marathon. For us, we're going to be looking at kind of this. Oops, didn't want to do that. Oh boy. For this here, we want to more so look at these two columns here. So I'll highlight those so we can pretty much see those. So we're looking at more so in general endurance. I'll move my cursor up here a little bit so we can see it a little bit more. General endurance here. So for women, we're going to concentrate on this 5K side here. Men will concentrate on this 10K side here. So general endurance, it's going to be for ladies, you're going to be running at about marathon pace to easy pace. Guys, easy to steady state pace. So pretty much the same thing. As we go up the spectrum, as we get into aerobic support, that's when we start tapping into lactate threshold pace for women and about marathon pace for the men, maybe tapping into half marathon pace, but pretty much it's going to be around there, just increasing that pace just a little bit. And then direct speed, where is it? Direct endurance support, just above it. Then again, too, for 5K, or the woman for 6K, we're tapping the 10K pace, and then guys, we're tapping that lactate threshold pace for the 10K. So again, it goes down through the spectrum there as well with the speed and the anaerobic side as well. This is important. This is a very important triangle, just like the triangle that we saw above here, where we have to start from the base and then work our way up. We can't have a pyramid start at the top. It just doesn't work that way. Gravity will just send that brick all the way down. We need to build that support here, build that kitchen before we can start making food at the top. So same thing with this triangle here too. This is our good base here. We need to build that base before going up to the top of the pyramid and making our food from the kitchen that we built down here. So pretty much here what you see is, and these X's here or these lines here, I'll explain that in a second. But here's our recovery runs, our warm up, our cool down. VO2 max. I have a different system for heart rate training, so it's pretty similar to what your heart rate percentage should be based on your maximum heart rate. Okay, so recovery runs, especially runs like that are after like a race. When I say, okay, yeah, go cool down, your heart rate should be around this. So nice and easy. This is the bottom of the base. This is, you're building up those capillaries and you're providing the blood with oxygenated blood, or you're providing the muscles oxygenated blood. So this is where we want to be. When we get into more so like those easy runs or just above an easy run, it's called steady state. So it's a little bit harder than those recovery runs or the warm ups that we do. And that's going to be about 65 to 75% VO2 max, or around 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. I'm going to talk about the marathon pace runs first, and then I'm going to talk about this area here. So marathon pace runs. Now we get into that run where if we're back up here, okay, I want to do an aerobic support run. Okay, guys, you're going to be going at marathon pace, for instance. So you're just above that pace of a steady state. But again, if you see your VO2 max here, you see 65 to 75% of your VO2 max. whereas marathon pace runs are run at about 80% of your VO2 max. You notice how in between that 75 and 80, there's nothing. This is called the gray zone. When you're in this gray zone and you're training in this zone here, there is no benefits. You actually can you can harm yourself more so than do anything. So it's either you're doing a steady state run or an easy run, or you're doing a marathon pace run at this intensity here. There's no middle ground. There's nothing there that's going to help support you or do anything for you. And so as you start training, as you start to understand like the topics and reasons why we're doing what we're doing, you'll start to understand like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to be running at this pace instead. Not in between here. So then again, too, here's your gray zone, lactate threshold runs at 88% of your VO2 max. Then we start getting into those intensive and anaerobic type of speed endurance type of runs up here. And we'll spend a little bit of time up here, and you'll see probably in the part 2 of this video what these mean here up here. So you have the intensive and extensive tempo and glycolytic, sprinting and really all out type of bouts with a lot of rest because you're working at such a high intensity. And that's why we're up here in the top of the pyramid, because again, too, we don't spend that much time up there. So this is kind of cool for you to look at as well, to say, okay, am I in the gray zone or am I training at where I'm supposed to be training? And so that's kind of cool to look at too. And I'll have, again, a heart rate training. You can see where you should be because it's, unless you've done a lab test of what your VO2 max is, you're not going to get an accurate VO2 max. I also wouldn't use your watch. I know some watches have what your VO2 max is. There's just no scientific proof of what it is. It's just a guesstimate number, so I wouldn't even go based on that VO2 max on your watch. I would go more so on heart rate training, and again, I'll explain that lower down in the video here. So what is the purpose? I'm not going to go through all these, but pretty much now you can start to understand, here's your lactic sprints. So acceleration, development, maximum velocity, those are going to be up here in that top of that pyramid here. But I'm going to scroll all the way down here to our easy recovery runs, which is our aerobic training, and done at 55 to 65% of the VO2 max. So right at the bottom of that pyramid, it's going to enable us to prepare the body and mind for our upcoming workouts or run that we're going to do, and we're going to turn on the central nervous system, and that's going to be what's going to be pretty much in charge of our bodies and our working muscles. Then we get into like aerobic threshold, or like our easy pace type of running, still a little bit harder. It's still one of those things where you're probably like a 5 or a 6 on the RPE scale, and we'll also talk about RPE. But as I mentioned here, it's kind of like a push the pace type of run. You're not breathing hard, but you're feeling good. Maybe your legs are turning over. This is where you're going to start promoting cellular changes, like the increase of the amount of mitochondria in your cells, and also the amount of capillaries. And capillaries are for those that have taken biology and all that, that capillaries are responsible for more oxygenated blood being carried to those working muscles more efficiently. And this is why we spend so much time in this area, is to increase those capillaries. So that's part 1 right here. Part 2, I'll explain a little bit more about our anaerobic side into our marathon pace runs.